My fellow Bahamians, good evening. The general election is now just hours away. Tomorrow, you will go to the polls, and in voting, you will be deciding the direction you want our beloved country to take for the next 5 years. It is a great honor to lead the Progressive Liberal Party into this general election. It is also a great privilege for me to stand as my party's candidate for the Centerville constituency. I want to thank the good people of my constituency for their great support over the years, and I thank them for their understanding during this campaign as I have traveled from one end of our country to the next. Ladies and gentlemen, we are a party with both a proud history and a bright future. When H.M. Taylor, Cyril Stevenson, and Bill Cartwright started the organized struggle for majority rule almost 60 years ago, they did so by bringing into being the Progressive Liberal Party. They were soon joined by Lyndon Pinding, A.D. Hanna, and other fearless men and women of that time. Out of that grew the greatest mass movement our country has ever known, a movement that led to the two most defining achievements in the whole of Bahamian history: majority rule in 1967 and independence in 1973. But none of it came easily. The outcome of these early struggles was anything but inevitable. Instead, it took vision and courage and great determination, and yes, a powerful belief in Bahamians to bring true democracy and real freedom to our beloved country. We owe this founding generation of PLPs a renewed commitment to see their dream realized. They achieved so much in their time, but Sir Lyndon, even at his death, was the first to admit that there was still so much land needed to be possessed. And how true that was, and remains true today. The work of the founding fathers of the PLP, who are also the founding fathers of our nation, remains unfinished. Enormous barriers are standing in our way. Great challenges are pressing hard upon us. Let's consider these barriers, and then let's look at the solutions and the way forward. The first and biggest problem we face today in the Bahamas of 2012 is a relentless and escalating wave of crime and violence. 500 murders in the last 5 years. Add to that the hundreds and hundreds of rapes, the thousands of assaults and armed robberies, and the drugs and guns that are flooding across our borders and into our communities. Let's make no mistake about it. We are a nation and a people under siege. The second major problem we face is this: our economy is in real deep trouble. When I left office in 2007, we had created 22,000 jobs for Bahamians in just 5 years. We were a regional leader in economic growth. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. We had excellent ratings from international credit agencies. That's a fact too. And we did it without raising your taxes. In fact, we provided tax relief. For example, we pioneered the use of the stamp tax exemption for first-time homeowners, making first home purchases so much more affordable to our people. But just look at where we are 5 years later. More than 40,000 Bahamians are now out of work. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. 1 in 3 young Bahamians cannot find a job. That's not an opinion either, it's a fact. Businesses and families are struggling with a tax burden that is crushing them into the ground. We have a government that creates jobs for foreigners but not for Bahamians. And we are drowning in national debt. Yes, the global recession was a problem, but that excuse has long expired. Our regional competitors shook off the effects of the recession long ago and are steaming ahead, leaving the Bahamas behind. People in the region used to look at us with envy as we surged ahead. Now they're looking at us in their rearview mirror as they race ahead. We have seen one after another the major international rating agencies downgrade our economy. And according to a new report released just last week, the Bahamas now ranks lowest in investor confidence in the entire Caribbean. But it gets a whole lot worse, doesn't it? Just look at the roadworks project in New Providence, a project that is now nearly $100 million over budget, the worst managed project in the history of our nation, a project that was shut down scores of Bahamian businesses and was a major cause of job losses in our country. And even though tourism is our #1 industry, the engine of our economy, it turns out that the Ministry of Tourism has been awash in shady contracts and mismanagement as well. The documents are available online for all to see. This government's Ministry of Tourism hired as a chief marketing company a company of one man, a company with no staff, a company with no history, a company that only been formed 3 days before the contract was issued, a company that had $10 to its name before the Ministry of Tourism came calling. Since this shell company collected $137,000 every 3 months, it got over $800,000 this way. Finally, the Minister of Tourism was forced to admit, and this is documented, he was forced to admit a complete collapse in proper marketing. He even admitted that the Bahamas is now experiencing the lowest level of Bahamas advertising in memory, if not in history. So now we have a glimpse into why our economy and our #1 industry are in such deep trouble, and why other nations have pulled ahead. Let's get to the third major barrier to progress for the Bahamas. It's an obstacle we have faced for the last 5 years, but God willing, an obstacle we will no longer face beginning on Tuesday of this week. We have a Bahamian government that does not believe in Bahamians. That's the most fundamental problem we have in our country today. Nearly 40 years after independence, to be told Bahamians need not apply is really unimaginable, isn't it? Whether or not a government believes in its own people affects every major policy decision, whether to keep BTC in Bahamian hands or sell it to foreigners, whether to truly invest in Bahamians or only throw a little money around at election time, whether to believe those young men on the street can succeed with mentoring and support, or whether to give up on them. So you see, believing in Bahamians is everything. It's the bottom line. Now that we've outlined several of the major challenges we face, let's get to the way forward. The top priority of the next government must be to acknowledge that the present levels of crime and violence represents a national security emergency. To address this problem, we need to bring the nation together. The police and defense force and law enforcement experts are on the front lines, to be sure. And they must have the technology and the training and the support they need. But we also need to bring clergy and the private sector and teachers and community leaders and youth leaders together in a common purpose. Fighting crime cannot be mixed up with politics. That must end. When the FNM came to power, they ended successful award-winning anti-crime programs simply because they were PLP programs. Areas with urban renewal had shown a substantial drop in crime. It was working, but was associated with the PLP, and so it was watered down and discarded. The same was true for school policing, tourism policing, and swift justice. And the same was true for witness protection. At least 20 witnesses have been executed in cold blood since witness protection was ended. The most recent execution of a witness took place just days ago. The man was the key witness in the case involving the murder of his nephew. He knew he was in danger. He warned everyone. The police did the best they could to protect him. But without the resources of witness protection, the safe houses, the funding, the personnel, the structured protection for families, there was only so much they could do, and it simply wasn't enough. He was executed in his own home. The gunman walked through a yard in which children were playing, entered the house, and shot him dead in his bathtub. This government failed a simple and profound moral obligation to keep this man safe. And not only was their decision to end witness protection wrong on moral grounds, it is of the highest stupidity as well. How, pray tell, can we obtain the convictions we need to keep criminals off the streets if people are too afraid to testify? That's what causes the whole criminal justice system and ultimately the rule of law itself to collapse if left unchecked. Yet, this government has still not learned from their tragic mistakes. Not a single word about witness protection in their new manifesto. So, we must bring back programs which were working, which were starting to make a real difference. And since the problem has escalated so dramatically since we left office, we must initiate a new set of solutions too. Last August, I introduced our innovative and comprehensive plan to fight crime, Project Safe Bahamas. It includes Operation Ceasefire, new strike force teams for rapid deployment, an intense focus on repeat offenders and the most violent criminals, and saturation patrols in crime hotspots. No one should have to live in a neighborhood where fear and menace rule the streets. We are going to flood these areas with police, with resources and support. We are going to have additional criminal courts and a special unit to fast-track murder cases. How can it be that the people accused of one horrific crime are freed on bail to commit more crime? This violates common sense. It's just downright stupid. For those out on bail, we will bring about increased surveillance, effective surveillance, not those electronic monitoring bracelets that have all kinds of problems. We will also increase Defense Force patrols to reduce illegal guns coming across our borders. We will increase gun interdiction in our ports, and we will increase the penalties for illegal possession of firearms and ammunition. We are going to create new teams of outreach workers, chosen for their street smarts and trained in conflict mediation. And then we are going to empower them to disrupt the cycles of violence in their neighborhoods and their communities. They will be mentors and counselors. They will offer links to social services, and they will also run shock treatment, a new program to show at-risk youth in clinics, hospitals, and morgues what the results of gun violence looks like up close. Of course, we will have urban renewal with new resources and programs to offer street-level support. Too many of our young people are just one bad decision away from condemning themselves to a lifetime of violence and incarceration and more violence. We must intervene, therefore, and get there first, helping these at-risk youth to find a different path forward before it's too late for them. Enough is enough. We cannot have our children grow up in a nation where violence is routine. Right now, the Bahamas is on a downward spiral. High unemployment and high crime are inevitably bound up together. Further, increases in crime could devastate our tourism industry. We cannot afford to become known for our skyrocketing murder rate. So as we begin to outline the ways to rescue our economy, let's remember that fighting crime may be one of the most important steps to creating jobs. Another crucial step, we must put Bahamians first. This government has awarded hundreds of millions in contracts to foreign companies for work Bahamians can absolutely do. Under the PLP, when contracts are awarded for constructing and repairing docks and bridges and seawalls and roads, they will be given to Bahamian companies. Last September, the PLP held a 4-day job creation and empowerment summit, during which we shared dozens of our plans to revive the economy and create jobs. Here are just a few. We must amend the Hotel Encouragement Act to require hotels to engage Bahamian entertainers and utilize Bahamian companies for ground transport and for bookings as well. This government has not protected our fishing industry from foreign poachers. We must now have increased air and marine patrols and tougher sentences for poachers. We must repeal the limitation on duty-free concessions for Bahamian light manufacturers, putting them in a better position to compete. We need to expand Bahamian ownership within tourism. Right now, there are too many obstacles in your way. We're going to knock those down with access to affordable land, affordable credit, and marketing support. In my last government, we provided $25 million to Bahamian entrepreneurs. We must build on this with startup capital and technical support for new businesses. We must reduce energy costs with a responsible energy policy, one that expands the use of alternative energy. This government's failure to do so has reduced the ability of even our best-run companies to compete. We are also committed to reducing stamp duties as a means of stimulating the real estate market and making home ownership more affordable. That's why we'll be lowering the stamp duty ceiling from 12% to 10%. Tonight, too many Bahamians are staring at a pile of bills they can't pay, wondering if their home will be next on the long list of foreclosures, a list that is now miles long. One of the most important ways to create jobs now and create a strong economy is to invest in you, Bahamians. We're going to double the nation's investment in education and training. We're going to create a public-private partnership and build 21st century classrooms. Our worker retraining program will retrain 5,000 Bahamians every year, and our career path academies will provide 15,000 students annually with vocational and technical training and apprenticeship opportunities in fields like financial services, tourism, and information technology. The FNM and the DNA both say this can't be done, that we cannot afford this massive new investment. We in the PLP disagree. Bahamians, I ask you to ask yourselves this question: how expensive it is if we don't make those investments in you, if we don't invest in people? What will it cost if an entire generation of Bahamians find themselves without the skills and education they need to compete in the 21st century? How will we ever turn more Bahamians from employees into owners? If we don't invest in people, what will our future hold? Bahamians, we have a big set of decisions to make about our future. You deserve an election about you. But too often, this election has been about Hubert Ingram's lies. He has lied about our accomplishments and our record. He has recycled tired old lies, and he has invented some new ones. Remember now, he did this in 2007. But this time around, you know the movie and how it ends. They yell and scream about the cookie jar and all the rest. And then when the election is over, not a single charge is brought, because it is all sound and fury. For them, it is political theater. That's why Ingram had to scramble and invent some new last-minute lies like the one about oil drilling. Bahamians, under my government, we will consult you in a national referendum about the way forward under oil drilling. We are not Ingram. We care what you think. You will decide the way forward. Now, on the new container port in Nassau, don't forget to read the fine print. It's not about the shares. The shares are a smokescreen for the monopoly control over decision-making given to a small group of insiders for decades to come. A group of wealthy insiders who have already raised fees, making the port one of the most expensive in the Caribbean, meaning higher prices are already on the way for you. My fellow Bahamians, please go to bahamastruth.org. You deserve the facts, and you will find them there. At every possible opportunity, Ingram congratulates himself on his leadership skills. Even with hundreds of Bahamians murdered, even with the roadworks nearly $100 million over budget, even with a Ministry of Tourism in a state of collapse, even with the Bahamas now ranked lowest in investor confidence in the entire Caribbean. That is why in recent days, so many former F&M supporters have come our way. They're tired too. The PLP is a big tent. We welcome all. And in our party, voices are heard and listened to. Those voters who were considering going green are also coming our way. And we welcome you as well. We hear you. We have heard your call for change. In our party, we are lifting up a new generation, and we have the new ideas needed to bring big change. A green vote is just too risky. That vote you're thinking about using as a protest could just turn into a permission slip for Ingram to continue on his path. And so I urge you, and I urge all Bahamians, to consider your choice carefully tomorrow. Your vote is important, and the way you cast it is too. Let's make tomorrow a day we're all proud of, a showcase for our democracy. I implore you all to behave responsibly. Before I leave you tonight, I'd like to ask you what it would feel like to wake up on May the 8th and know you had 5 more years of the F&M government that doesn't believe in you. What would it feel like to wake up on May the 8th for another helping of an F&M government that dared to tell you Bahamians need not apply? What would it feel like to wake up on May the 8th with an F&M government that never seems to say no to Brent Simonet, but says a big no to new investment in your education and training? What would it feel like to wake up on May the 8th with a government that still has no clue about how to fight crime? But instead, what if you vote for change? Imagine you wake up on May the 8th and you have lifted up this extraordinary new generation of leaders I have around me. What if you had a government with a serious plan to fight crime? What if you had a government ready for revolution in education and training? What if you had a government ready to put Bahamians first? Beloved Bahamians, we are at a crossroads. Come with the party that believes in you. Come with the PLP. Let us decide together that we believe in the Bahamas. Let us agree that in this, our beloved Bahamas, we have the will, the innovative ideas, the burning desire, and the determination to move our nation forward, upward, onward together. May Almighty God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and all its people. Thank you.